Lo-Fi Games has said that Kenshi 2 will be a prequel, set 1000 years before the game we know and love, which not only tells us that the stories established by our individual playthroughs can remain as our own personal headcanon, but also offers us the tantalising chance that many of our burning questions around the lore of Kenshi may be given answers. The ambiguity of Kenshi's lore is one of its strengths, and I'm sure the prequel will raise just as many questions as it answers. But here are a list of just 5 that I've always wondered about, and some theories as to their possible answers. If this video does well, I'll almost certainly do a part 2, so don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of content. And please put your own lore questions in the comments, I'd love to ruminate on some of them in a future video. Number 1. Where did the Hives come from? The question of the origins of the 3 Hive subraces of Kenshi is an open one. We can infer that they weren't always present, at least not on the continent on which the game takes place, or at least not in their current form. A few theories have been posited, however. One is that the Hive was genetically engineered or selectively bred by the skeletons in the Second Empire, similarly to the Shek. I personally believe this theory to be unworkable. The Shek are one thing, socially and physically very similar to humans, a believable species of primate whose bony carapace and horns is reminiscent of other creatures on Kenshi, such as the bone dogs and bulls. There is clearly some genetic advantage to these carapaces on Kenshi, so the Shek could have developed into the horned primates we see today through evolution by natural selection, or have had their genome spliced with existing animals. Their aggressiveness could have also developed by natural selection, in not being a completely unreasonable adaptation given the nature of Kenshi's world. The Hive, on the other hand, are utterly unlike primates, or even the vast majority of mammals, their society being eusocial, similar to that of a bee or ant colony, with a single queen and an army of dependent drones. There is 1 or 2 rodent species on Earth, such as the naked mole rat, which exhibit eusociality, but what animal of Kenshi behaves like that? A piece of evidence posited is the biomechanical construction of the wombs of the queen, but Hive princes are known to be highly intelligent, and I don't think it's unreasonable that they could have come up with these innovations themselves. A possibility is that the humans were gene spliced with skin spiders, a theory mostly believed due to the aesthetic similarities between the 2 species, but a big problem with that idea is that the agrarian western hive are most similar in colour to the carnivorous skin spiders. If they shared genetics, you'd expect the skin spiders to be pink like the meat-eating southern hive, and other than the fact that the bugmaster seems to have some level of control over them, we have no evidence of skin spider eusociality. There are no separate castes of skin spiders, nor any known queen. The other theory then is that the Hivers came from outside the continent, which I find a lot more believable. Perhaps some progenitor of the Hive lived underground in the time of the old empires, or on another continent, or even another planet. Whatever the case, the Hivers will exist in Kenshi 2, and we can assume more people will remember their origins, and we are likely to find more clues or even a full explanation of where they came from. Number 2. How did Chitrinism and Okranism diverge? As Mol, leader of the Flotsam Ninja, says, there are many interpretations of a single religion, and Okranism is no exception. There are 2 broad interpretations of Okranism at the cosmological level, one that Chitrin sacrificed himself and split into Okran and Narko, and another that Okran has effectively always existed and Narko emerged later in order to do war with him. One can assume that the Chitrin first interpretation preceded the other, since it has more in common with the story of Stobe's sacrifice on which it is thought to be based. Chitrinite interpretations of Okranism are more ontologically dualistic though, with Okran and Narko being 2 parts of a single whole, both dependent on each other and important for the maintenance of the world, and since the misogyny of the Holy Nation is backed by an interpretation of Narko as wholly evil and unnecessary, an earlier Chitrinite Holy Nation may have been a far more tolerant place. One also wonders what other scriptures' interpretations have been lost in the thousands of years between the 2 games, and whether early Okranites had more understanding of Stobe. I hope that early Okranism will resemble early Christianity, with lively debates and disagreements over the religion, and we'll get to see these play out in Kenshi 2. Number 3. What was the early United Cities like? We know the United Cities was once a loose confederation of city-states which was brought together over time, similarly to the early United States. I'd be really interested to find out what the individual cultures of these cities was like before federalization into the United Cities. Were there experiments in liberal democracy or socialism, or were all the states simply feudal fiefdoms from the start? The fact that the Greenlanders from the Second Empire mixed with the freedom-loving pirates of the Great Desert leads me to believe that there must have been some diversity of ideology in the early United Cities. One might even conceive of some kind of anarcho-socialist configuration. This is a broader point, but the ideologies of Kenshi are some of its most interesting facets. But all we really have in Kenshi 1 are theocratic fascism, monarchism, and feudal anarcho-capitalism, and loose critiques of each in the other factions. It would be amazing to see explorations of communism, leftist anarchism, even American free market liberal democracy in Kenshi 2, as different factions grapple with what kind of world should be built in the ashes of the Second Empire. Perhaps Kenshi 1 can serve as a critique of the political visions put forth by the characters in Kenshi 2, showing us how the most noble of intentions for their societies can descend into authoritarianism over time. Number 4. What was Cat-Lon and Tinfist's relationship? We are told that Tinfist and Cat-Lon made a great team, and now Tinfist fights for a losing cause for the humans, while Cat-Lon disappears into thin air. It is likely that Tinfist held some kind of military, administrative, or political role in the Second Empire, but we don't know what this was. We know the two have drifted apart, and that may be more due to Cat-Lon's madness than anything else, but it would still be fascinating to see the two of them working together, or even apart, but with some semblance of their relationship still intact. On the subject of Tinfist, we might also see the beginning of the anti-slavers in Kenshi 2, as according to the wiki, Tinfist has been active in anti-slavery for a millennia, which lines up perfectly with the timescales of Kenshi 2. I believe that Tinfist may have been in charge of some of the poorly fated projects during the decline of the Second Empire, and that might explain why today he spends his energies trying to free humans from slavery. Number 5. What was the level of technology at the end of the Second Empire? This is as much a mechanical question as a lore one, but the level of technology in the second game will give us a lot of clues as to the answers to many of our questions. Did the Second Empire have genetic engineering technology, and how did it work? This would answer many of our questions about the Shek and the Hive. I don't think Kenshi 2 will have guns, since there's already technology far advanced of guns in Kenshi 1, so I think the lack of firearms is probably due to some in-world limitation on the resources necessary to create gunpowder. But what other weapons did the Second Empire have access to? Perhaps energy weapons? We may also find the Ashlands to be still inhabitable in this era, and many have questioned the purpose of some of the technologies there. We may also learn more about the Eyes of Venge. So there's my top 5 lore questions for Kenshi 2. If you have your own suggestions for questions, don't forget to put them in the comments. I'll be sure to credit you if I use any of your ideas in the follow-up video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.